Welcome back to the Elaborators. Today on the Elaborating podcast, I've got a couple of guests in the room with me. I've got producer Simon, as always, of course. Hi, mate.
Hello.
You look lovely today.
Thanks.
I think your hair is on point.
Great. I've got a jacket on today. I'm pretty cold.
Right. It's a jacket day. And
It is.
I don't know.
You just don't feel the heat, the cold, I guess.
I'm just fat enough that I've got my own layer of protection. I'm a middle-aged fat guy. What can I say? Am I allowed to say that?
It's you are allowed to say that.
I'm allowed to say that. Yeah. If you ever say it to me, I'll be greatly offended.
Right.
Stan Ritchie, don't say anything. He's in the house. How are you, mate?
I can't say anything. I'm speechless.
One of the biggest topics in your Christian walk, and this is the issue of trust. How do you trust a God you can't see in a world that is as messy as the world we're living in? How do you trust Him with your life? Because we start with a decision to say yes to faith, and for some of you listening and watching, you haven't even said yes to faith. So hopefully this can be an encouragement to you too, if you're sort of seeking and searching for why we do what we do and why we keep on doing what we do. But how do we actually go about trusting God with our lives when we've got kind of a historical document in front of us called the Bible? We've got the historicity of Jesus Christ and some of the testimony, and essentially the only testimony we have of Christ down through the ages is the impact that we see in a thing called the church, which He established through Peter, who He built. Peter was the rock on which He would build His church, and then we all try and get it right thereafter. And I think most of you listening and watching, and including the producer Simon and Stan in the room, would probably agree that there's enough stuff to say this thing hasn't worked as well as we'd hoped. So, Stan, you lead a church. Do you ever think, is this a good idea? How convinced are you day in, day out that we're actually doing what we're supposed to be doing in trusting Christ with our lives and developing community around it?
Wow, that we need like 4 hours.
4 hours. You got 10 seconds.
It is a constant battle and challenge, because you, as a pastor, you go into ministry because you believe that the world needs to hear the gospel. People need their lives changed by Jesus. And if you're gifted in preaching, then, God gives you a passion for that. And those are the things that you really want to focus on, and you want to see people's lives being changed. But then the bigness of what church actually is and does, and all the competing interest. Because as soon as you got people around, there's expectations of what you should be doing or shouldn't be doing, what things you should advocate for or shouldn't advocate for, and things like that. And for me, I just want to advocate for Jesus and the gospel, and for you to follow Jesus, and let's keep it that simple. But it's a constant battle to keep centered.
Well, we've been working through the book of James, and James has that very famous passage that faith without works is dead. There's no
useless,
worthless. Just chuck it out. Just burn it. It's chaff. So we do have to apply action to our faith. And so I thought the question we could ask of our listeners and watchers and us in the studio today is, where have you actually recently even found another challenge to trust God with your journey? So I think I'm gonna throw to producer Simon for this one. What do you reckon? Should we just put him on the spot?
Sure.
Let's do that. So you've been we've heard a little bit of your journey. If you want to know a bit of Simon's journey, just watch all of the podcasts for the last year, and you'll piece. Maybe we could do that as a highlights reel, just Simon's
Snip it all together.
Snip it
yeah,
all
but it'll
together.
be me that has to do it, so I might be a bit biased.
But where have you found your faith has grown through applying that trust? Most recently, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's probably one that is always floating in the background in terms of giving. There's always one that is just, when bags of cheese are $10, and when you get email after email of, we're just going to put your price up here and your bill up there.
Yeah.
And then you look at where you can get some money in, and it's like, well, I'm not going to take away from that, like from giving to the church and things. It's like, that's a big trust thing for me, at least.
Nice.
Of just that, well, it's going to get tighter and tighter, but I don't want to tighten that belt because I'm going to rely on that provision.
Yeah. So the discipline of giving money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Giving money into good works.
Yep.
Which is
I think that's
what we're talking about.
from a lifestyle perspective as one for me. I think from a singular thing, I would say just from a lot of the stuff we try here. We just we
within
try
church
it.
life.
Yeah, within church life as staff here and as trying to move a church forwards and growing it.
Yeah.
We try new things, and you just have to make progress and not perfection, and take a step and see what happens, and then take a step and see what happens.
There's a lot of people listening and watching that work in churches. Stan, how do you go about having a crack at things in church life where probably people think we know? I was going to say we know what we're doing, but there are elements that are unique to every church congregation and unique to every arena. There's something in your gut that says, I think we should preach this, or I think we should try this program or whatever. And if it doesn't work, what happens for you when it doesn't work?
I'm not sure. I haven't been there yet.
Something pride last week and humbleness.
The crowd goes wild.
Yeah.
There you go.
No. Well, I think there's
talking to someone with a 100% track record. I'm excited.
No. I think as best you can, you when you're considering what we're going to preach, when you consider what activities we're going to engage in, you try to listen to God through His Word, through the Holy Spirit, and you evaluate your circumstances, your situation, the people that God has brought you, and the resources He's given you, and try to make informed decisions, but with a clear sense of leading. And by God's grace, I think we're getting it right more than we're getting it wrong these days. But there's times when we try something and it didn't go. And it's like, what in the world just happened there? For me, it goes into a time of reflection. It's like, okay, was that just my idea? Was that a God thing or not? What is God doing in that? Because I don't believe God's going to waste it, even if it didn't work. What are the learnings for that for us? What could we have done differently? Was it the wrong timing? Was it, or was it exactly what God planned and it just wasn't what I expected? And that's where I usually land.
So the difference between the plan and the expectation. So they often say the tension is between expectation and outcome. So,
expectation and experience.
Your
experience is different than your expectation, leaves a gap.
Yeah. So
what do you do with that?
Generally overthink everything, right? Like once you're looking into that gap too hard.
You've met my wife.
Again, tell us. I know, Stan. You've actually got a book on your bedside table about overthinking, and the stats that came back in that guy's research, I believe, was like 99.5% of us are overthinkers by definition.
Yeah.
Which should be an encouragement to all of us. But of course, we tend to overthink about the negative, right? Mm-hmm. So how have you disciplined yourselves to push towards trust? Because surely trust is about letting go of some of your overthinking, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I'm not sure that I would equate the trust to letting go of the overthinking. I'm dealing with a couple situations right now that are pretty major, and as I'm wrestling through them, there's a heaviness, there's an uneasiness, and things like that. But there's a remarkable trust factor in it that honestly I'm almost surprised by. That it's so heavy in one sense, but at the same time, I know I'm not in control of the outcome. And so I'm actually, while I don't want it to go certain directions, I'm actually okay if it does. And that's the weird part. And I think that's the trust part, best I can.
And it probably sounds deeply philosophical because you're not giving us detail of what's happening for you as a leader, which is so often the case, isn't it? When you're in the middle of it, there's not detail, and we can share stories from lessons learned, I guess. But you're always in the midst of a lesson being played out, and I guess that's where the trust comes into it. For Simon, it was around the giving is the trusting part. I'm just going to keep trusting God with that. For you, maybe that is the thing that you're trusting God with right now, just the leadership stuff that you can't control.
Yeah, the leadership stuff I can't control. That's the thing. And as I was saying earlier, you go into ministry because you want to preach the gospel and you want to pastor people and see people growing in faith and everything. But then there's all the things that have to happen in our society because you have buildings and you have regulations and you have safe churches and you have the finances are always a big thing.
Yeah.
But, it's for me, if church was just the Sunday thing, that's the spotlight that you work towards, and that's when you're on display.
Sure.
And we have to do a lot of hard work to get there. But that's really the tip of the iceberg, the stuff that's happening through the week, good stuff, ministry stuff. I am blown away right now with some of the things that are happening in our community and our reputation in the community because of that. We're getting lots of good feedback about some of the initiatives we've done with some of our programs through the bridge and stuff. And I won't bore you with all
But community services. But again,
community services.
But they are a visual thing that people can point to and say, Isn't that beautiful?
And it's because we're activating our faith. Being doers of the word, not hearers only, which is exactly what we've been talking about. And when you start hearing from people outside of the church community talking about this place and the things that we're doing in a positive light, that is honestly, that's what you dream of. You can't buy that kind of marketing, if you will, but the impact that it's making in the community is awesome.
This might be a bit of a left field thought, but one of the things I've been speaking to a lot of people about recently is the exhaustion level from some of the criticism that comes against the church. And right now, of course, probably the most famous one is the Hillsong documentaries that are seemingly every media outlet is jumping all over, and the amount of news that you see from central media outlets that make it feel like we've just all failed. The church is getting sort of just this bad reputation in the community, and it's impacting I've got friends who have stopped attending church because they can't deal with the headlines around church life. So they haven't lost faith, but they are losing community of faith simply by the exhaustion level of what it feels like to be a Christian community today. I know that we've talked recently around some of the political things that would be considered moral issues in church life for Christians, that then feel like we're supposed to vote yes or no on something and be absolutist about it. And I keep coming back to this thing of the Jesus bending down in the sand, writing and waiting for people to understand that there's a lot of grey in what we do and how we approach things. Have you guys felt that exhaustion from the I guess just the mainstream media? I'll use that term. I don't mean it in a derogative way, but essentially the big headlines that are going on. Have you felt that exhaustion around church life of late?
I'm a person that has tuned very much out of news.
Right.
And I let news find me. I did that during COVID. Yeah. And that's helped me a lot because someone will say, hey, have you heard about this key thing that will actually impact me? And I will have heard it, in the mainstream media ways, somehow it gets to me. I think from a church perspective, maybe it's because I'm on a staff in a church that is active in the community and doing good things. I generally tell myself I need to, as much as that scenario has gone downhill for that church or for that documentary or whatever it might be, I know that my church is doing some good things, and then I'm just going to help my church continue to do those good things.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a lot of trust in that, and just like, I know, and I will do my best to let other people know what our church is doing. And so I've managed to, I'll see those headlines, and it's annoying to keep on seeing headlines.
Yeah.
But I just have to keep telling myself that there's many, many churches out there that are doing amazing works that aren't as good at telling people what they're doing.
Yeah.
In the shadows.
Oh, and again, big church, big target. Big movement, big target. So I certainly see that aspect too. But I like the idea of, we talked recently about pride and the negatives of pride, but the positives of pride is called an authentic pride. And having an authentic pride in what you're doing, showing fruit of the Spirit. What about you, Stan? I know that you deal with this on sort of a larger narrative with your church council and your leadership groups in general. I know you met recently with a bunch of senior pastors. Is it something that is spoken about or plays on you a little?
I can honestly say not as much, because if I let it can be, Simon used the word annoying, and I like that. I try not to let it be a distraction, because the reality is there's always going to be headlines out there. And for whatever reason, the church and Christianity, if you make one misstep, then it's all over everywhere. We don't talk about other faiths and religions and things in the same way. Don't hold them to the same types of standards. In fact, some of the positions that some of the religions take on some of the social issues that we get criticized for either taking too conservative a stance or not as, strong. Christianity gets attacked more than any other, and it's just weird. But like Simon said, for every headline that's out there about a church that has a misstep, and again, it's all about people. It's about a person who made a mistake, who sinned, who fell, who whatever. And the one of the big takeaways whenever I see those things is to be on guard and say, okay, that could be me.
Right.
And to make sure that I'm putting into myself the things that I need to be for accountability and everything, to make sure that I don't make those missteps and not have pride to assume that, well, those are terrible, awful people, and that couldn't be me. So I think I go into a mode of trying to be humble enough to realize that how fragile all of this is.
I think that's a word I've used a lot lately is understanding how fragile our church is. How fragile, and I'll say faith communities, whatever your faith community is, and as long as it's based on everybody being good all the time and never making mistakes, especially when it comes to the person you consider to be your spiritual leader. And hopefully that spiritual leader has enough humility to continue to remind you that they're just human as well. And as you said, Stan, putting those things in place to keep on your guard. But it really is a fragile ecosystem, as fragile as any family or any community could be. There is no magic trick to this, but I come back to this Galatians passage about the fruit of the Spirit, because to me, the word trust, and we've been talking about what it is to trust God with our lives, to trust Him with our community, and all the rest of it. But this is the fruit of the Spirit, and I'm just going to check this. So you guys tell me if you've got it. Fruit of the Spirit is love. Have you got that one?
Are we allowed to say yes with the pride talk we've been talking about?
With authentic pride. Have you got, joy? Have you got joy?
Yeah. This is always one of those, like, does it have to be all the time?
It's the fruit of the Spirit. There you go. But what I'm saying, these are the things that are signposts of people that are walking in faith and applying it. Peace. How's your peace? How's your patience? Oh, let's equate trust and patience real quick. You start to feel some conviction. Self-control. And it says against that, there's no law against those things. So if you want to know what you're never going to get picked on for, it's these things: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And all of those things come back to, do we trust God with our lives, with our journeys? And I think for me, it's, again, I've got young children. You've got, we've all got children, and there's that continuing process of going, I'm not in control of their lives. I get to guide them for a while, as our parents did for us, or our mentors did for us. You get to guide people for a while, and then you just trust that the lessons that they've learnt will actually guide them through the rest of their lives. And I think, to me, that's probably the best picture of the spiritual journey, of the trust. And Stan, for you, somebody put trust in you once as a young man to stand up behind a pulpit and bring a sermon, or
what were they thinking?
Right?
My first sermon ever was from Jonah, and it was the pitiful prophet with a poor perspective about pertaining to his portable pulpit.
Of course it was.
Right. Of course it was.
Of course it was.
And that took 30 minutes, right? Just to say the title.
Yeah, ChatGPT can do those titles for you now,
Yeah.
Oh, don't do that while I'm drinking water. I must spat it on the
Give me a
microphone.
10-word sermon title only using the letter P.
So, no, the trust. Someone saw something in me that I actually didn't see in myself. I would have never saw myself. I'm actually a pretty extreme introvert. And people see me on the platform and speaking and everything. They think, well, no, you're natural with that and talking and all that. But it's not my natural MO. But it is an apparent gifting, though, that God has given. And other people saw it before I ever did, and then they trusted me, and I had to trust God with that. It's like, okay, this is way outside my comfort zone. But yeah, that's one of those areas of times of trusting God early on. Yeah. Which actually, when I think about even being in ministry today, and this is kind of confession time a little bit. You know, you say yes to God at one point, and you start following, and there can be a tendency then to say, okay, I said yes, now I'm all in, I'm plugged in, and I'm doing it. You know, every day, just get up and keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And you trusted God way back then, but the daily trust, when the new things are coming and the new obstacles, can I dare say, at risk of disappointing anybody that respects me, that you have to remember to trust again. You know, it's like I'm dealing with this situation and I'm panicking and I'm overwhelmed and everything. And it's like, well, hang on. I trusted God way back here. So, yep, we made a deal, God. You and me, we got this doing. But now I need to trust again today and trust again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And then, wow, I'm preaching to myself right now.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, look, I think one of the things I've found myself sharing with my kids a lot lately is that thing of, I guess, you know, the anecdotal stuff is this music, we've all heard it before. This fashion, we've all seen it before. This stress of you know, whatever it is the kids are going through. You realise you're actually speaking to them, saying, I've done all that. You know, the clothes you're wearing, I've worn those clothes. I've been into that punk scene or whatever it happens to be. And it seems that life keeps reminding us. I'm sure you were a good punk back in the day, Stan. I can see you with a bobby pin through your nose and a face tat. I think that's have we got images. Actually, can
I
we
don't know. He's just staying very quiet right now, so he's not digging himself a hole.
It.
Yeah.
I say, can you get AI to produce an image of Stan as a punk? I think that's the thing. But the point is that being there before. So as a parent, you say to your child, "Hey, this is how I navigated that," and you try to do that. The trust issue is actually believing that God knows what's happened before, what's happening next, and that you'll get through today. But there are days, and let's again, you said confession. There are plenty of days you wake up and think, no, God doesn't get this at all because He's not fixing it fast enough.
Right, because
okay.
the outcomes that seem to be happening aren't. That's like there's no way that can be God's plan. You know, because I've got a much better idea what that looks like, and it even seems more of a righteous and holy plan than what I see in the ills of society and people's lives and everything. How can I trust you, God, when you're not intervening in all this? And that's where it's really tough.
So let's just narrow this for a second and get it down to brass tacks. You get up in the day, you haven't slept overnight because the anxiety has been too much, the confusion has been too much. You've tried, you've paced the floor, you do what I do, cook bacon in the middle of the night. Actually, that could be a spiritual discipline. I'm not sure. Midnight bacon might be a spiritual discipline.
I'm thinking leaning into it.
Yeah. So to both you guys, I guess you can answer this question. What do you do to catch yourself in that moment and lean into trust? Because I think everybody's got bad habits that they know about. Everyone knows about their bad habits. I'm going to binge watch this. I'm going to lean into the negative part of who I am. I'm going to lean into essentially the flesh, the sinful side of who I am, because that'll give me the quick hit of adrenaline and the quick hit of I'm in control of me. And Scripture over and over teaches us not to do that. But the hardest thing that we're talking about is trusting God. And to trust God, we have to deny the flesh, essentially.
Yeah. I think if you get up and start your day and all those anxious thoughts are there, and you're thinking about how the day might play out even with all of the things that you know are there, it can easily be overwhelming and almost paralyzing. And for me, I have to, I start my day with my quiet time. I start my day in prayer. But still those anxious thoughts can be there. And I have to say at that point, almost out loud to myself, it's like nothing's going to happen today that God's not already aware of. And the things I can't control, He's going to, and it may not look like I think it should, but I've got to trust Him, because what else am I going to do? Right. And it's like I can either go through this day anxious and overwhelmed at every moment because of what might happen, Or I can just say, what might happen is going to happen, and I need to trust God. And yeah, that doesn't excuse any responsibility from me. I still need to do the things I know.
It's not a fatalistic approach. You're not just saying,
but,
no.
So I still make every effort I can, but still trusting God with the outcomes that I can absolutely not control.
Yeah.
So
I think the prayer word in there as well is what was coming to mind was those times where you're really feeling something and you share that with someone and they say, have you prayed about it? And sometimes you're like, oh, yeah.
Of course I have,
Of course
right?
I have. Yeah, it's just that.
Because God's always listening anyway, so I'm always in prayer, right?
And I think that was just what was coming to my mind of it's almost, it's what triggers that reconnection to it. It forces you to give it back a little bit. And I think it's very easy just to take it all on and assume he's always listening. But actually,
one thing
outwardly ask.
Yeah. One thing I actually did very recently is I was having one of those mornings and praying, but I actually, there's some prayer warriors in my circle, a couple of people that I know are just great prayers and they define prayer almost. And I just sent them a message, hey, I need prayer.
Yeah.
Can't even talk about it. I just need prayer. And they affirmed that they're praying, and that, to me, that leans into the prayer because you're actually, it's not just a mental, okay, I hope you're listening, God, but you're actively engaging others in that. So you're acknowledging the need for it. And then really other people start praying as well. And God hears those. We'll talk about that Sunday too. God hearing the
and if you do want more in depth on any of these particular topics over the last 4 weeks at Werribee Baptist Church, you can jump on the YouTube and check out the messages we've talked about: wisdom and pride and trust, and I don't know what else. What else have you preached there, Stan? You preached a bunch of stuff, and it's all good. So go and check it out because we've just understood from earlier in this podcast that Stan has a gift of preaching. So it's there. It's right there. We have it recorded for you. The was that a good segue? This is the second part of that scripture in Galatians says, those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the sinful nature with its passions and desires, including the desire to control the world, I suspect. And it says, since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. So final question, what does it actually mean to keep in step with the Spirit when it comes to trusting God with your life, trusting Him with, in this case, we've talked about our professions. You're a pastor, so it's sort of, trusting God with your profession is literally trusting Him to speak to you and help guide a church. Like, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, but, you could probably do that without trusting God and being unspiritual and everything, and just there's probably lots of those.
I'm sure we wouldn't want to cast aspersions, but I'm pretty sure I've seen some people do this professionally without necessarily the inspiration that they need to do it. Yeah.
But in trusting God, I think a verse that comes to me, one of the reasons we don't want to trust, we've got the pride in there and everything, but we don't want, again, I've said this a bunch of times already in this podcast, but we don't want the different outcomes. And a lot of times those outcomes center around our own comfort or our suffering, and we want to avoid that. And in 1 Peter chapter 4, Peter's talking about suffering for being a Christian. And if you're suffering because you're following Jesus, that's a good thing. If you're suffering because you're just a jerk, well, that's on you. But then he says this, he says, if you are suffering in a manner that pleases God, keep on doing what is right and trust your lives to the God who created you, for He will never fail you. So when we look at that, it's trusting God means accepting that it might get uncomfortable and it might include some suffering, but God can still be trusted in that moment.
And that's walking in step with the Spirit.
That's it.
There are ways that we try and do this as a community. Simon, I know you've set up the prayer wall.
Yes.
How do people access that? If they're listening to this and they think, I need prayer, but I don't have a network like Stan has.
Well, you can go, we've got a few different ways that you can reach out to people at werribeebaptist.org.au/prayer. We'll take you to a little part of our website with a whole bunch of different resources, including links to meetings, like online meetings and things where you can reach out. We've got prayer request forms where you can literally just enter in your need anonymously if you wanted to, and that will get, if chosen, it will get sent out to a prayer team, a squad of, I can't remember how many, over 100 people, I think, on the list that will receive that prayer if you want them to. And then we have an app as well, and there is a prayer wall on the app, and you can submit requests into that, and others will see it. and they can mark that they're praying for you, and you can feel that encouragement.
Absolutely. So our walk of faith is a walk of trust. Trust and faith are is sort of the same word, really, isn't it? It's trusting and faith and trust and faith and faith, but trying to have that patience, that joy, that long suffering, all of those things that we've talked about today. I should say it's probably sounded like a fairly somber conversation, but I will also point out that it's a good life.
Yeah.
You enjoying it?
Yeah. No, it really is. And honestly, the days where you are anxious or discouraged or wonder, is this really worth it? Am I making a difference at all? One of the thoughts I get is, what in the world else would I do? I can't imagine doing anything else.
Wow.
And not because I'm not competent or capable or whatever, but because I just cannot imagine doing anything else. And I think as long as that's still there, then you can recenter through those situations. But anyway, I'm rambling.
No, for sure. Look at my prayer.
Some nice rambles.
Yeah, I
would probably say that it's you also just hear those little stories or feedbacks or snippets of impact, and it can, you can be spiraling down and down and down, but then one little thing, or at least for me, one little bit of feedback or constructive, this made an impact for me. Suddenly you're back up here.
Yeah,
and then the more of them that come in, you're like,
It's a good reminder of how simple it is. So here's our challenge. You're listening, you're watching, and right now you're thinking, there's a person that's really impacted my life and made a difference in my life. We have these magic things called phones. Text that person and say, thanks. Just text it. Honestly, that sort of feedback, I liked the thing you made. I liked I liked the sermon you gave, or the painting you made, or the thanks for or whatever it happens to be. Thanks for I've got a couple of mates in my life that every now and again I'll text them to thank them for things they did 20 years ago. Because they're still in my life, and even that amazes me that they're still there. But things where, for instance, for me, a musician, the people that gave me a chance to play the instrument, that handed me the instrument and showed me how to play the instrument.
Nobody ever gave me an instrument.
Yeah, I think they did. Perhaps it wasn't your gifting. They gave you a pulpit. That was there were other skills and other blessings.
Oh, it's beautiful.
On that note, it's a beautiful life, walking in faith and walking with Christ and learning to trust.
Amen.
And so, gents, thanks for your feedback. To those watching and listening, let us know how you're going. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about, and make sure you go send someone some encouragement today. But remember, trust God, because He's about the only one you can trust. Is that right?
That's it.
Sounds about right?
That's it.
Yep.
Any final words, gentlemen?
Goodbye.
Have a great week, everybody.
Yeah.
Grouse week. Go with grouse week. Grouse as. Thanks, everyone. Oh, sorry, we forgot. Obligatory wave. Happy elaborating. God bless y'all.